This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Jeff Gardner.
Welcome to another episode of the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today we have another good neighbor on, Matt Drury with Legacy Funeral Homes. Matt, welcome to the show, man.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. We're looking forward to having you on. We had a great conversation with Rosalind Watkins at, was it Farmview newspaper?
Yes.
Very, very friendly woman. And to know that she's been doing this for as long as she's been doing this, I just have this immediate increase in respect. Like that box is checked when I hear somebody's been doing something for 46, 47 years. And when she nominates somebody to come on the show, like we're interested to speak to everybody, but especially when we get a recommendation from another guest, it's very exciting for us. There's really only two ways to get on the show: either get nominated by our audience or nominated by one of the guest members. So I'm looking forward to learning more. I don't know a whole lot about the funeral world, although we do have a number of clients across our book of business that are in the funeral world. So I'm looking to learn a little bit more. And if I am, I imagine the audience is. So let's get right into it. I'm making no assumptions. Like I've never heard of a funeral home before. Let's play it that way. So tell us about your business, Matt. What is it that you do?
Yeah. So a lot of people know what a funeral home is. When somebody passes away, that's who you call. So what we do is we care for families when they have experienced the death of a loved one. We are a full service funeral home, which means that we can do everything from just a simple cremation or alkaline hydrolysis to full traditional church services, burials, that kind of thing. We're really starting to do a lot of celebrations of life. We're not a cookie cutter kind of funeral home like the old traditional style where we can accommodate families and do that. But we're more trying to really do what a family needs to do, what they want to do. So kind of outside the box, if you will.
So I really like that. I imagine most of that I don't know, but I just like the idea of, at least if I interpret it correctly, things were done a certain way for a long period of time. This is the way it is. And although you offer those services still, I imagine, you are now opening up new avenues to provide new products and services that better fit the needs of the family. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly it. And I don't want to kind of jump ahead, but I want to just let you know that I've been doing this for almost 30 years. So I've been a licensed funeral director for 24, been in the funeral industry since 1996, working part-time, going through school. So I've seen the change from the traditional where most families would do the same thing, a visitation, a funeral the next day. Well, things have changed. Things that used to be important to people aren't so important. People are having different ideas, wanting to put together their own celebrations of life, maybe tweak things a little bit differently. And that's what we're here for. We're here because we're not forcing somebody to do something a certain way just because that's the way I want it or that's the way it's always been. We're encouraging people to make it personal, to make it meaningful. So what we're trying to do here is do something a little bit different where we're transparent and we can have that conversation. We don't have an agenda. The only thing we want to do is make sure that when a family sees us and they make the decisions that they need to make as far as celebrating somebody's life, they have all the information they need to make an informed decision to celebrate that life the way that it's meaningful for them.
I think it's so important with so many businesses. You know, our whole thing is helping businesses scale, right? Through connecting to the people that they can impact the most. So we talk about business models all the time. And profitability is obviously at the top of that list in many cases. So we understand that if things run this way, we will be more profitable. And through more profit, we can hire more people, et cetera, et cetera. There is obviously a large benefit to being more profitable. But sometimes we get stuck. I've certainly been in businesses before. I think the best example for me was prior to helping businesses scale, which has been my main focus for a little over a decade now. I was in the health world, fitness. Mainly, I helped bodybuilders, one myself. So that was my main niche, but hockey teams, male and female, really any level of athleticism is what I focused on. And there was a way to do it. And there was some benefits to it, for sure. They didn't just make up a way that wasn't beneficial, but the coaches that I really connected with and then adopted these strategies thought of there is value in that way, but there are missing some pieces. And sometimes it took me a little longer, and sometimes it wasn't quite as profitable, but it almost always resulted in a deeper connection with the person that I was trying to help, which, penny wise, pound foolish, I may have not made as much money on that initial session, but because our results are better as a team now, as a tandem 2-person team, the referrals went further. My level of fulfillment went way up. So now I was thinking less about money and more on impact. And your words sound the same. So rather than me rambling on and on, let me just ask you some questions about it. What is the cookie cutter way? And what is the thinking outside of the box way that you're trying to, or that you've incorporated into your business?
So that's exactly what you're saying. There's an importance to celebrating somebody's life. I mean, we celebrate birthdays, we celebrate anniversaries, and we don't do those things the exact same way for every single person, but we do those things. So really what has happened in the past, I don't want to give you a whole history, but over the past 100 years, typically—
Oh, we love the histories, Matt. We love it. Tell us.
So typically what would happen is the local woodworker, carpentry guy, the furniture store kind of got into making caskets, and they were the undertaker. Before that, families kind of looked after their own, right? Buried on the family farm. There was a lot of most people went to church and they had a service, right? So when the furniture maker kind of started making the caskets, and he'd be the local undertaker, they would have the wake or the visitation in the family home with the casket in the home. Embalming became a thing, and they would do that right in the home. And then they would do a church service and then the burial. As things progressed into the 1900s, old homes were transformed into the local funeral home. So every town pretty much had a house that was the funeral home. So you would start to do visitations there, and then the actual funerals at the churches, and then go to burial. And then fast forward, probably, I'm going to say probably the 50s, 60s, they started to be bigger homes, maybe built specifically for a funeral home, where you would do the visitation and the services in that facility. So those things became the norm, where you always had 1 or 2 days of visitation, where friends, family, the community to come pay their respects, support the family. And then the next day you would have the church service and the burial. That's not where we are anymore. With cremation coming in, it really took off in the 80s. The 90s really saw a boom. And through the past couple of decades, with recessions and with the way that, people are struggling with funds, cremation became the less expensive way of, looking after the actual body of a deceased. But what people figured out was I can still do everything that I want to do. If I want to have a body present, I can do cremation after. We can rent a casket, or we can do cremation ahead of time. We can just have an urn present. As much as I still encourage people to find a permanent place for cremated remains, it is legal to scatter in Ontario. So a lot of people are scattering cremated remains. So there needs to be a balance between what is healthy grief, and that's bringing the community around and celebrating somebody's life, and cost. And that's where we come in. And that's the biggest transparency that we have, where we can have that open discussion with people and go, okay, what is it that you need when you're grieving here? Do you need the big community? Do you need, a smaller thing? Are we going to be involved? Is it going to be something that you do on your own? We have those conversations, and we just put out all the information in front of them. And especially when it comes to money, that's where a lot of people get, I don't know what the word is, but that's where people have the most difficulty. And I think that's where funeral homes have gotten a bad name as well, where it was all about business, and it was, how much profit can we make off of this? Where when we opened, yes, it's a business. We need to survive. We have overhead, but we need to care for these people that are coming to us. We need to have those open and honest conversations with them. Not going, okay, well, here's the cheapest, just do that. Or trying to talk them into something. Just give them all of their options, be open about what the price is, and do it at a reduced rate than what some of the other funeral homes are offering. So that's kind of where we are. Sorry, I rambled on there, Jeff.
No, that's I was going to ask you about the history, because it's just the way my mind works. One of my favorite things about being a marketer, we really call ourselves human connectors, is the storytelling. Like, it's just curiosity about other humans. My main study in life, I don't sell these products or services. It's not about that. It's about living a high quality of life, is human potential. Like, what is a human capable of? And to know our history is a great way to figure out more about our present. And then maybe that can lead us to a more accurate future in some way. So I was going to ask you about the history regardless, because you see these shows, and I'm not going to go too much on this branch here because I want to get back to, but you see these shows from hundreds and hundreds of years ago of the funeral pyres. So we were cremating way back. I feel like burial is something newer. I'm not sure about that. It was probably there way back as well. But I really like that. It seems like your main thing is considering the needs and wants of the person that is standing in front of you when they're going through potentially one of the hardest things they've been through in their life at this point. And, when I still don't even really know what a celebration of life is, so we're going to get into that in a moment. But when I think about my funeral as I am today, because I do think about death a fair bit, actually, it's part of my philosophy. I think it's a great way to become grateful for your existence, is to know that you have an end date and you don't know when it's coming, rather than just avoiding the whole death conversation. I feel like once understood a bit more, that it can actually empower a human being to really get the most out of their life. There's some of my favorite philosophers out there. They say something along the lines of a well-earned or well-employed life leads to a happy death, right? If you die well, that likely means you lived well. And maybe that final experience, I would argue more than maybe, is a part of wrapping it up, like having that last. And the way I look at myself right now, like if you ask me today, it's like all my loved ones on a beach, having a great time in their board shorts and their button-ups, and great food, great celebration, the stories of my life, like chapters of a book. And then that's just a part of it, but really, like, use me use my last day. I live my life well, and I'm happy to have done that. I'm not begging for more time. I got to play the game, lucky enough to play the game. Use this, my final experience, as a way to bring people together. If you were to ask me what I would want today, that's what it would be, rather than dark and dreary and rainy out and black clothes. And that could be perfect for somebody else. But you saying you have options, I think is great, because my description right there, I've never been to a funeral or celebration of life like that. And it's like, if somebody wants that, why not? Why not let them have their final experience as what they want? I like that you're thinking that way, because I don't know anything about this business, but all the funerals that I've been to look the same. So I would argue that, this is the way we do it. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is a certain, even though we want to think outside the box, there is a certain kind of guideline or surrounding, because we only have so many things legally that we can do with a body, right? So just trying to unpack a lot of what you've talked about. Yes, going back, I mean, if you go back into biblical times, it was all burial.
Oh, it was all burial. Okay.
Yeah. They even talked about embalming in the Bible, right?
Wow.
Did a little bit differently, and then the Egyptians would embalm, entomb. Different cultures did different things. So in India, the funeral pyres were the way that they dealt with a body. The indigenous people in North America had air burials. So what they would do is they would build kind of a structure and put a body up top, and the animals would take the body. Right.
That makes sense, especially with the indigenous, everything going back to nature, which I think is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I don't imagine that everybody would love that, but I do see the beauty in it.
Might be frowned upon, in our day and age, but it does go back to that. And I mean, we're going back to certain things like natural burials. There's more natural burials coming to Ontario, where cemeteries are putting a section in where, maybe you're wrapped in like a cotton, and there's no casket. You're buried just in the ground. There's no machines digging. There's no lawnmowers. There's no, tombstones like we know them. They would be marked with a tree or a natural rock or something like that. So everything is natural. Alkaline hydrolysis. So it's a water cremation. We're learning a lot.
Curious about that.
Yeah.
When you said that, I didn't know what that was. So yeah, what is that?
So what it is, I mean, and I'll be kind of gentle talking about it, but there's a water which is high in alkaline. There's an alkaline solution. There's a way of mixing it. A body is put naturally. There's no clothing or anything. The body goes straight on into a cylinder. That cylinder is shut tight, almost like a submarine. And then it is vertical. It moves to be, or is horizontal, moves to vertical, is filled up with this solution, heated up. And over time, it just breaks down all the tissue in our body. So it's just the bones that are left. So similar to fire cremation, but supposedly from what we know right now, there's less impact on the environment doing things this way. Cremation, we thought, was the more environmentally friendly way of looking after a body. And it has come a long way, but with using the gas that it uses, with the emissions that it has, just like cars, I mean, it's been reduced over the years, but it's still not the environmentally friendly way that maybe it needs to be. So we're still trying to look at, what are other options that are economical and that they will actually be better for the earth. Okay. I just want to kind of go back to what you had said about, you think about death and you think about your funeral, for lack of a better word, or your celebration of life. I think that's important, because as much as we don't want to talk about maybe when we're going to go, but I mean, a life well lived is a death well done, right? But it's very important for us to talk about what we want, because a lot of times families will come in and they're left going, I don't know what they want. But it's got to be a balance of what the individual wants and what those left behind need as well.
Huge, right? I'm gone.
Right? So
they're still here. So let's make them happy. At least be a part of it. At least a part of it.
I've had people come in and they go, I just want to be cremated. I don't want anything, nothing, which is fine. And that might be what you want, but you're not being very thoughtful to the people that are left.
Right.
Because what do they need? And again, that's where the conversation comes up. I don't care if you do it with me or not, but a healthy grief is to be able to come together and to mourn the loss and to celebrate the life of the person who has passed away. So I think it's a balance between us being vocal about, what do we see our celebration of life being, or a funeral, or whatever you want to call it, and what are those that are left behind needing as they try to move forward, right?
I think that's so important, especially from your perspective, dealing in death. It kind of sounds, I don't know, harsh, but it is your business. Mm-hmm. So it's not harsh. It's actually a beautiful part of life. We start the same way we finish, with that first breath, and we celebrate the beginning of life. I think there's a great argument to celebrate the end of life, but really just to celebrate life in general. You got picked to play the game, so you're lucky. Not everybody does, no matter how long you get. But you said healthy grieving is, I'm not going to say it verbatim, but what I took from it was healthy grieving is coming together, supporting each other.
Yeah.
And, and acknowledging and even celebrating the loss, essentially. Doing it together. Yeah. The amount of grieving you've seen, you think that is a healthy approach to it.
Absolutely.
Just being together.
Yeah. Giving a safe place to be able to cry, to be able to laugh, to be able to share stories. Nothing worse than somebody who doesn't have something and their loved one is trying to carry on with life. And yeah, sure, there's going to be some people that don't know that somebody passed away, but this person who didn't have that community being able to come together, their loved ones are going to have to be able to, every time they go to the grocery store and they bump into somebody, have to tell their story over and over and over again. Right. It's not an easy thing to do. And we need to have that place where it's okay. It's okay to talk about stuff. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be angry. My dad passed away 2 years ago, and I have a difficult time in the job that I'm in to mourn somebody, because I'm used to being on this side of it, and I'm looking at all the details, and I'm trying to navigate everything. Uh-huh. And it's not, I've noticed if I don't let myself be part of what that celebration is, or that funeral, or that memorial, or whatever it is, then I'm not being able to kind of let it go. I'm not letting the person go. I'm just letting all of that pent up anger or sadness or whatever is there out.
I think it's such an important piece for any struggling in life is that you said it. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to feel whatever you're feeling, as long as you feel them.
Yeah.
I think it's the ignoring of them and the stuffing down of those emotions, because emotions, I think we struggle sometimes because I remember one of my favorite quotes is freedom is found between stimulus and response, meaning something comes at me in life, and if I just react right away, I get hit, I hit back right away, then I'm really not choosing to do that. That's my emotions in the driver's seat. Mm-hmm. And Viktor Frankl, it's a great book, one of my favorite books, Man's Search for Meaning. He talks about freedom is found between stimulus. So you get hit, you pause, and then you decide what is your choice going to be and that's agency, freedom over your own life. So to feel those emotions, not necessarily act on them all the time. I don't believe my emotions are a direct compass to where to go, but they have a reason and they are strong. And certainly from being raised, no knock against my parents. That's the way they're raised. I love them. I have a great relationship with them. But, boys don't cry. And I was an athlete, and, we fall, we scrape, you don't make a noise, you get back up. And I just think that lost its value. Over time, we've evolved, and we found that boys do cry, and girls do all kinds of things too, and guys do all kinds of things. And just to really just sit in them, those emotions, and to feel them, maybe ask, why are they here? Or maybe not even ask a question, maybe just be with them. Something that meditation teaches us about. I find it much easier, like you said, to do that with people. Sometimes I don't want to cry with people. I cry on my own, but feelings can be very strong and very uncomfortable in some cases. And knowing that I have a great support system around me, I'm definitely going to be more confident to go through them, knowing that I have somebody to ask for help, or just someone to lean on, or just simply somebody to be there in the room. Sometimes is enough. So you have become an expert on grieving, I'm sure. And that's the way you think a healthy approach to it is feeling them, like being authentic to yourself and your feelings, being around people that you love and trust and can be supported by. Those, you would say, are kind of the foundation to a healthy grieving.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And I'm just listening to what you were saying. And one big thing that, going back, the boys don't cry, suck it up there, is I know when we go back, maybe our parents' generation, even before, there was infant death, miscarriage, all those kind of things would happen. And you know what, you just buck up and you get on with it.
Yeah.
And yes, life does go on. Yes, we do need to keep going, but no, we need to talk about that. We need to, maybe we don't need to, everybody's different. Some people will open it up a little bit more, but we need to be free to talk about those losses, because those are real losses and they will have an impact on our life and how we are able to kind of move on. What's going to trigger us if we don't deal with what's happened to us, especially a mother like us as guys. My wife and I, we lost 3 pregnancies at different times. And at that time, we're going back over 20 years ago, nobody really talked about it. There was some support out there. There was some information, but it was very minimal. It was kind of hard to get. If I wasn't in this business, I wouldn't know where to go. So now it's really big. There's a great group in Barrie called Bridget's Bunnies. They're there to support moms and dads that have lost a pregnancy or an infant, just to be there for support, because it's important to be able to do that. And for the mothers, what does that look like for the next pregnancy? What, am I scared I'm going to lose this baby? Just all of those questions that are there. If we just kind of push things down and we're not open about that, if we're not talking about it, we're not going to be able to move on.
So I think the talking point, the grieving point is so crucial. And I imagine people don't just come to you to say, hey, we're going to do this funeral or we're going to do this celebration of life. But I imagine just in my own business, we often talk about, we become therapists of entrepreneurs. And I work at an addictions facility on the weekend called Cornerstone Recovery. It's fantastic. But I'm also a personal trainer there. I help people move through into their sobriety and through their sobriety with fitness and different modalities, their spiritual side of things, mindful side of things. But you often become this therapist. I imagine people come to you and say, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to feel. I don't know how to bring my family together. Like, do they come to you almost like you're a priest in some way for advice? Because you are in that last stage of life. You're the expert.
Yeah. And I think that's something that when you go to school for being a funeral director, it's not something that is really taught. And I think that's, yeah, I think really the older we get, the more we do what we do, we become those experts, whether we know it or not. And certainly people know that when they come in, we have those conversations, they feel comfortable. They kind of, we're like the bar, well, not the bartender, but the cab driver or whatever. And they will just talk.
Exactly.
Right. And, you know, it's difficult because you don't know the background. You don't know these people. You know the grief they're going through, but all you can do really is care for them, and hopefully that you can find something from the knowledge that you've attained over the years that you can share with them without, damaging them or maybe sending them in the wrong direction. But yes, absolutely, become that therapist for sure.
It's special work, man. I mean, everybody's work is a answer to somebody's problem. And that's why businesses are so powerful, or I respect them so much and have such power in our day-to-day life, because they're the answer to somebody's obstacle. I just think there's sometimes more important obstacles than others. Death is certainly one of them. I mean, it is one of the few absolutes we get in life. There's no gray area. It is or it isn't. And my grandmother's 91 now, and we just had Mother's Day with her yesterday, and she's just a fantastic human being. Just, her love language is food, right? She's that old school Eastern European, Austrian.
Yeah.
She'll feed you till you explode, right? But, she's losing her eyesight. Her feet are hurting, her knees are hurting, and we're preparing for that now. These conversations are coming, and she's stubborn and not great at communicating. So death is not something that, I mean, she's in that denial phase. I think she's been in this phase forever. She's never liked to broach the conversation about death. And that's what made me think about the therapist side of things, because whoever we decide to get help from, I imagine we're going to be asking those questions. What would be a great way to communicate with her? Should we bring her down here so that she can see how beautiful this place is, so that she can talk to you and get a feeling for you and know that this will it definitely will be her last home? I think those are important conversations, because even though we won't be here, there must be this palpable connection to that final. That's the way I kind of look at it. Like, this is my final home. It has to line up with me, or at least with my people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I certainly encourage that when people are coming to, prearrange for whether it's a parent or a grandparent, to bring them down. And as difficult as that is, because I mean, even with me in this, I mean, we're not guaranteed the rest of today. Right. I mean, your grandmother's 91. Good for her. Yeah, that is great. There'll be people that'll live until they're over 100. There'll be people that, I mean, will pass away young. So it's hard for me as a person. I know I have an expiry date. I don't know when that's going to be. I want to live life to the fullest. I don't want to dwell on, when am I going to die? But certainly we need to talk about those things, and we need to have that plan. And I think for somebody that has, they're cognitive, they're able to grasp things, that it's important for them, certainly to go, okay, who is that funeral home that we're going to use? Where are they? Can I trust them? Do I like what they offer? There's a lot of elements to it. And I think it's important to be able to answer as many of those questions as possible, so that the person who it's for, knows that their family is going to be in good hands when that time comes, and they can trust them. But also for the family to know that, yes, my loved one is okay with us going here and trust and has met these people. It's certainly about a relationship. And I know during the beginning, you had mentioned about, being able to be, I can't, I'm not going to say verbatim, but it is relationship. It is knowing who you're dealing with, being able to trust them. And that is huge.
Yeah. I mean, so much of life, the older I get and the more that I talk about this on the show often, I'm very lucky to have phenomenal mentors in my life, really have changed the trajectory of my life entirely since my early 20s to my late 30s now. One of them encouraged me to study broadly at the beginning. Just try stuff, try a bunch of stuff. Don't go too deep on many things right now. Just try as much as you can. And then when you find what you like, go deep. Right. So now you're left with these 4 or 5 subjects that have really provided a lot of value to your life. And so that's where I found myself. And I only talk about a handful of things now because they really equate. They are the sum of my whole life. And relationships is so huge in every part of it. In my business, for what we do for businesses, at the end of the day, as I said at the beginning, human connectors, that is the relationship. So yeah, products and services, they gotta be there. If I came to you and we just had a great relationship, but you didn't have anything that could help with that final experience, of course, that's not going to work. But the products and services are the one step. Once we have that box checked, now it really is about this human that I'm interacting with. And the one that I interact with better, that understands me better, that listens to me better, that really is putting that foot forward to say, what you care about is important to me, and we're going to do our best to make it work, especially with such a, I don't want to say fragile, but I can't think of a better word than sensitive. It's an emotional experience. So I'm glad that's a priority. Now, something that I'm really curious about, Matt, what brings you into the world of death? What's the story behind that? Because I'll give a little context again. It's one of the most fascinating subjects for me now, because it has provided so much value to my life. The more I learn about it, the more I understand about it, the more beautiful life seems to me, the more grateful I am for my life. And often, I have that internal roommate that he's often talking shit up there and saying, no, do it later. Just do it later. Do it later. But I have my first 3 really are 1,440 is number 1. That's the most important. That's the amount of minutes you get in a day. So every time I look at my arm, I'm reminded that clock's ticking and there's no guarantee to get another 1,440 of those. And then the very next one is remember you will die. Those are the main 2 things that I live my life by, because everything that I want to do or feel or be is hinged on time. That I have very little control. I would argue I have no control almost of getting more of it. The only thing that I have control over is what I do with it. So then the next one is, I got the amount of minutes in a day, then remember you will die, be here in this moment. So if I'm spending all my time in the past and then the present, I'm not really soaking up the beauty of this moment. And then the 4th one is to do hard things. So that's really my combination. Know that you have X amount of minutes in the day. Know that those minutes aren't guaranteed to get them again. Every moment is special. And then to really grow, you got to do hard things. So I have that roommate in my head saying, you can do it later. Just do it later. That dream that you have, start it tomorrow, start it next month. But it's through the embracing of the fragility of life that I have done more and experienced more and enjoyed more, really, especially when I find myself being whiny and complainy and just not the version of myself that I try to be. I would think we're all flawed. I certainly have my flaws. That's when it's like, is this providing any value to this moment? Or sometimes I'll go to the extreme. If this was your last moment, is that how you want to experience it? And I immediately say no. And then I go do something I enjoy. So I say to you, what brings you to the world of death? Someone could ask me that question because I think it's one of the most leading indicators of my life, but it's not about me. I just wanted to give some context, as I do find it fascinating, and it's changed my life. So I want to know, how did it come into yours?
Well, I love that list on your arm, and I think subconsciously that's where I am too. So when you started saying those things, I'm like, yeah, I never really had that at the forefront, but yes, definitely that's where I am. But where did this start? A long, long time ago. So when I was 7 years old, our bus stop for school was in front of a funeral home.
Oh,
so
okay.
we would be there. We'd be looking in the windows, thinking we saw stuff. When we get off the bus at the end of the day, there'd be a visitation or something on. I would, watch that. I would, want to be that person who wears a suit, who helps people. When I was being brought up, we went to church, and every single funeral was that visitation and church service, right? So we went to all of them. And at that time, you didn't say anything. You just kept your mouth shut, but you went. And I just kind of watched, and I watched how these individuals helped these families at one of the worst times in their life. And that interested me. But I think also we all have a curiosity, a morbid curiosity about death, and we want to know about it. And I think it was kind of a balance between that curiosity and also wanting to help people that kind of pushed me into this. So up until, my early 20s, it was something that I wanted to do, but didn't think I could do. I certainly didn't want to deal with the dead bodies, right? I just wanted to wear the suit and, help people, but that wasn't the whole job. So I kind of left it. My early 20s, I met a new licensed funeral director came to town, and he was around my age, and we became friends. He actually lived in a basement apartment underneath my sister. So got to know him, got to ask some questions, reading his textbooks. I ended up going part-time to Humber College to maybe knock off a few courses so it'd be easier for me to get in. So I ended up getting into, there's two schools in Ontario right now, Humber College and College Boreal, that offer the funeral director program. So I got in when I was 25. I was licensed when I was 27. I'm 51 this year. So I've been licensed 24 years. But it really, I think it was a bit of life experience and really seeing, okay, what impact can my life have on other people, and how can I care for others? As much as everybody has a place and not everybody is the same, where is mine? Because I don't want to take away from somebody else and what they're doing, because we can't all do the same thing. We need all these different people doing different things, but this ended up, I think, being where my spot was, where I was able to make the most impact for the life that I'm living. And that kind of in a nutshell is where I started and kind of now where I am. Opening up the funeral home, I don't know if I'm kind of jumping here, Jeff, but
go ahead, man.
The reason why we opened up, we've been here for 3.5 years, but I've worked in Simcoe County in funeral homes, 3 other funeral homes since 1996. And our family is from Simcoe County area. I grew up in Alliston, moved to Barrie in 1999. But there was a lot of changes that were happening with the funeral homes. I think a lot of them got used to the traditional, where everybody was doing, a day or two visitation and the service. Everybody was buying a casket. There was good money to be made. Absolutely. Right or wrong, it was a very lucrative business. Then things started to change where people weren't doing what the traditional was. There wasn't that, revenue coming in like it was. So they were trying to reinvent themselves to try and keep that profit coming in. And where I was prior to opening, the owner and I got along great, and we were really serving families. but there is some writing on the wall. It was that time that business was most likely going to be sold. And it got to a point where I really believed that it would only be able to be sold to a big corporation. And I really wasn't comfortable with going down that direction. There's a lot of good people and a lot of good things that happen in corporations. That's fine. But they really do push the bottom line. Some corporations have to answer to stockholders. Other corporations have to answer to certain levels of management. And, you know, it is about the bottom line. This is a business, but does it have to make a huge amount of money? No. So that's why my wife and I had a discussion, put together a plan, and that's why we opened. And I think really what we need to focus on is the balance between care and being able to make a living.
Which, you know, I really love that, because I've heard that a few times. As I said, we have a number of funeral homes as clients. They're a good client for us. They're a high-end ticket service, and we have a very affluent audience. That's who we cater to. That's our niche, is the affluent communities around, you know, all of Canada and the States, but especially in Simcoe County, York Region, Muskoka. And I've heard of that a number of times before, where it was leading towards getting sold, and then a corporation buys it up because they have more buying power, and then they buy another one and another one. And then you lose that personal care now with a service that I think really needs that personal care and can make a big difference. So I love that you say that. But I really hope that through this change, it's maybe 10 years, I've been noticing it, that this change of going from this is the best way to make money, so important, to caring a little bit more to the needs and wants of our client, maybe make a little less money in this immediate circumstance. Like I was saying, as the personal trainer, a lot of businesses are feeling the same way. We've done this cookie cutter thing for so long, because we made our system very, very efficient to pump out the most of these. Therefore, we make more money. And there is some altruism to that too, because more employment and more opportunities. Although I would imagine a lot of the altruism falls away with a lot of businesses. I like to stay on the optimistic side. But when we care more for the people, we provide more value. We have this saying at our office, the business that provides the most value wins. And if sometimes that's us, you know, like this free podcast certainly costs us money. And we're bringing out more and more free services to help local businesses more. I have to believe that that will make a profitable business, and more so that if I went the cookie cutter route, maybe it just takes me longer, because we're impacting lives more. Yeah. Your approach to business, I mean, I guess it depends on how we define. Does it need to make a fortune? Everybody defines that a little bit differently. But I would really like to believe that we're moving into a world, or are already there, where you have the cookie cutter approach if somebody wants it. But you have out of box approaches too if somebody wants it, because it fits their needs. And because you gave them this experience that they won't forget, they're more likely to tell somebody about it. They're more likely to not forget you and your business. And I love it. Maya Angelou says, they won't remember what you said. They won't remember what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. And that's a lot of what I base a lot of our decisions on. You can make somebody feel great, somebody feel important, then that value exceeds the price point, and it's meaningful now. And I think if our work can be meaningful, that's got to be an important box to check. And I hope that's the case with you guys, and long term into the future, 3 years into 30, with your model being your priorities as my customer come first. And I hope that can be a very profitable approach too, because it just seems right. Making money is important. We have to do that. But I think caring for the individual is just as much or more important. And I think we are in a place that we can do both. So I love that you pointed that out, and you made a few comments about that. So it really does seem like that's the priority, which is important. That's the whole point of this podcast, the whole point of connecting to our communities. But I just find it very interesting about your story that death has kind of been there since the beginning, right up front of your bus stop. but that your priority was, what did you say? Oh, I'm forgetting the first part. A way to help people. And what was the other reason? To get into your appreciation for death, the way it made you feel about life, something like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't remember what I actually said, but
I think that's what it was, though. But it's a very cool story. Just knowing that it's been there for that long, and that you were thinking of that way in your mid-20s. I really didn't start thinking about caring and servicing my community. Like, yeah, somewhere near the end of my 20s, only because I had great mentors really pumping it my way. I feel like that, for a lot of us, that stage of our life where we really start thinking about how can I serve my community, how can I serve my family, and start giving back, comes a little bit later. Maybe I'm just a late bloomer. I noticed when you said it that it's pretty cool that it came so early for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think there's a late or an early. I think that's our time. It's just, you're where you're supposed to be at that time.
Yeah. I like it. That makes me feel less like a late bloomer, Matt. So let's get into you a little bit, man. We just heard about your story, and thank you for letting me pick your brain so much. I could talk about death for a long, long time, because like you, I don't look at it the same way that most of us in society do. It's not an icky conversation for me. It's actually one of the most curious, one of the most beautiful, really, for me. So I really appreciate you letting me pick your brain. But let's talk about you. What puts a smile on your face, Matt? What do you find yourself doing for fun when not at business?
Right. So that's a loaded question, because the last 3 years, as we opened up this business, I'm spending a whole lot of time here. However, I have been married for 23 years.
Wow.
So my family is a huge part of my life. So when I'm not here, it's usually spent with my family, and kids are in their 20s. But what we really enjoyed is, especially when they were growing up, but it was things that I enjoyed too, which make me happy. Hiking. So we were doing a lot of hiking during up the Bruce Trail, trying to do as much as we could doing that. And baseball. Baseball is huge for us. I don't get to many Jays games anymore, but the Barrie Bay Cats here in the Barrie area, love them. My son was actually the bat boy for a number of years, and really grown to love going to the games there, socializing with the people there, but watching some really good baseball. So really, really just trying to enjoy what's around. Love to walk around the Bay, downtown Barrie. Fantastic place that we have right here at our doorstep. So really family and just being outdoors, enjoying what is around.
Are you guys in Barrie? Are you on the outskirts?
We are. Yeah. No, we're right in Barrie. Have been since '99.
Yeah.
And
it's a special place.
I think it is. I mean, we've seen it. My wife is actually from Barrie, and I think I had mentioned I'm from Alliston. So when I was a kid, we had like 4,000 people in Alliston. That was kind of pre-Honda. So if you wanted to do anything, you would have to come up to Barrie. Barrie was the place to go shopping. It had the mall. It had, the theaters, whatever you wanted to do. So I still consider Barrie as my hometown as a kid. It was my second home, my home away from home. But we love it here. I think we're going to stay here, hopefully until we die. But we don't plan on leaving. It's a great place. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I come from the South, so spent a lot of time in Aurora, York region, Toronto. And it's interesting. I ask that question to everybody that's come on the show, right? We want to know life is more than business. Business can be this incredible avenue to find out who you are, what you're capable of, and your impact on the world. but there's so much outside of that too.
Mm.
We know the people that have just worked day in, day out every day and have missed major points in their life. I think we can have both. But it is a common thread, absolutely, from the 200 plus shows that we've done, how important nature is to our entrepreneurs. Now, we only interview entrepreneurs, so I can't say that for the rest of humans, but it seems so integral to just be out there. No screens, just be with the family, sports, hiking, whatever it is. And that's one of the reasons why I love Barrie. And I'll be moving there within the next few months, Midhurst Valley-ish area, maybe right in Midhurst Valley. I can ski right there. I have the sports down the street. We got the water. We got the city. We got great dining. We got festivals. And for where I come from, at least my experience, people are friendly for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I find them much more welcoming in Simcoe County. I find, when you're walking the dog, people want to come up to you and say hello. So that's just been my experience. It's very welcoming and inviting, and it seems to have everything that I need. Whereas Toronto is also incredible, but it's more of the extreme, right?
Yeah.
You get the bigger city and the cons that come with the bigger city. So it checks a lot of boxes. It's a beautiful place. Pivoting a bit, we talked about this in the pre-show, talking about hard things. I told you it's number 4 on my arm. And why is it important to me? Because through my study of health and fitness and the mind, and that was the industry I was in, but prior to scaling businesses, and it's really just provided a lot of value to my life. So learning about neuroscience and how our body works biologically and physiologically, it seems like one of the best skills that a human has compared to other species, if we're going through even evolution and all that, is our ability to adapt. We have this incredible ability to adapt to almost anything, but the body needs a reason, a good reason. It doesn't just change in a moment. To get better at that test, you probably need to study a harder test, and then a harder one, and a harder one, and a harder one. Same with just building strength in the body. You need to continue to add weight to the bench. Emotions, I need to continue to feel them and have hard conversations with my, loved ones rather than avoiding them. So it seems like we need a level of hard for growth. So I think there's that one point. The other point is people often equate failures to be hard, shameful moments to be hard. So there's this like negative connotation sometimes when we talk about hard, and people sometimes stuff it down, and they fear embarrassment or ridicule if I share with you that a business failed, or a girlfriend broke up with me, or I got divorced or something like that. Like, those aren't things I don't want anybody to know, because I would be embarrassed about it. Whereas I think there's a real empowerment to embracing it, knowing that we are humans and we have ups and downs. Denzel Washington calls it failing forward. And I think there's real truth in that. And if we embrace it and share it just with one another, like you were talking at the beginning, just talking about your grief, maybe that's something that seems hard, but how much it can help you grow. So really, we like to ask the guests on the show, has there ever been an experience? I imagine you've had some, because you're human. Trials and tribulations, hardships that you've been through that probably sucked in the moment, because hard usually doesn't feel good, hence it being hard. That probably sucked in the moment. But when you look back in hindsight, you say to yourself, there's no way I would remove that ingredient from the recipe that is me, because it's been integral to me enjoying my life as I do today. Anything come to mind, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. Marriage, right? Just to,
I like it. Tell me, man.
Just to be an open book. I mean,
yeah.
Really, it takes work, and it takes hard work. I mean, back married 2 or 3 years, really, it would have been easy just to go our separate ways and just be done. But the both of us made a vow, and we're like, we gotta do this. And 22 years later, 22 years later, it's not that it's getting easy, but it is getting easy. We still have our issues, but it's a lot easier to deal with things. It is so much better. And I think that goes with a lot of things in life, where if it means anything to you, you're going to go through that valley, or you're going to climb that mountain. And when you get over it, it's going to mean so much more to you. And you're going to have that experience that you're going to be able to actually accomplish a whole lot more. So going through that hard time is worth it.
So well said. I mean, I'm not just saying that because, first off, when people are answering this question on the show, it's emotional, right? Often, sometimes people are talking about death. I thought you maybe would bring up those 3 pregnancies, which, you know, my condolences for that. That's got to be super brutal. But you were quick and concise, and it wasn't even about the speed. It was just about how concise it is. At the beginning of anything meaningful, you're going to go through, we call it the phase of suck. So you use the mountain as a metaphor. Climbing a mountain is super difficult. But when you get to the other side, if it has meaning for you, just because you've been doing it longer, it will start to get easier. And I think that's how I weigh a lot of the decisions in my life, is that I don't need to tackle everything that's hard in front of me, because I would get nowhere. I would just be spinning my wheels in the mud all day. But if it has meaning to you, like your marriage, just hanging out in there a little bit longer, trying to tweak this to make it a little bit better here and there. I imagine it was the sum of millions of little micro actions that led you to this easier place and this more comfortable place, this more enjoyable place. But you just said it so succinctly. You are going to go through a difficult period at some point, if it's meaningful to you, because there's hard with everything meaningful. But if it stays meaningful to you over time, it will get easier, was essentially your point.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And
it's great, man. It's great. I
was just going to say, even with, I'm a funeral director. I've never owned a business before. You know, I know how to do funeral directing. I know how to deal with families. I know how to do this job. But to open up a business and to take that risk and to go through all those new things, and it really opened my eyes to going back when I was an employee, and I had all the answers for who I worked for, right? And it's like, no, people don't get it. People don't understand how hard it actually is.
Yeah.
And it's really rewarding when you work through it and you get to a point where you're understanding a whole lot more, and you don't want to just let things go. You're constantly building, you're constantly learning, you're constantly moving forward. But it certainly does become more the norm. It becomes easier as you go. So, I mean, that's another hard thing that, you know, we've worked through.
Yeah. Well, entrepreneurship, and that's why we're in this world. Like, this job didn't pick me, or maybe it did. I don't know. Life has a weird way of working. But through learning how to scale my own business as a personal trainer, because I was on my own, and then we built it into a team of about 11 of us plus me, and that was something very fulfilling. And just the growing of this business had so much more impact on so many more lives than I had as a solo personal trainer, that I said, this is where I have to go next. So I have to share this with people. But just real quick, do you think, to an extent, it's hard to use absolutes or like empirical facts, or so definitive with any of these things? So generally speaking, you think the more skin you have in the game, the more rewarding it is when you start to succeed?
I think so. I mean, I would be happy to doing this job, whether I had a partner or two, wouldn't really matter to me as much, because I'm still doing what I love to do, and that's helping people. But certainly I'd have to say more than likely, yeah, that would be correct.
It's an interesting thing. Eh? It's like the harder that mountain is to climb, damn, when we get to the top And it's not even about the destination so much. It's how difficult the journey was and what you were learning along the way. But when you get there, or you finally get to a place where you say, I no longer need to work 14 hours a day because I hired a team and I can relax a little bit, spend some time with my wife or my people or whatever. It just seems like, when you bleed for something, I guess there's something in life. When you work that hard for something like the marriage, like the business, there is this great sense of fulfillment, and why the best things in life cannot be given to us. And we see it when people try to do that, try to replicate. I have done all this in my life to get to this point. I'm just going to give it to my children. We've seen that's just one common, stereotypical example, but we've seen what's happened to those kids when they didn't have to earn anything. We call them those spoiled kids, and we've seen the damage from it. So you just put that so well. I appreciate that, man. And it's also reinforced the way that I live. So it's great. It's like if somebody else there is doing it the way that I'm doing it, I can't be too wrong is the way I'm looking at it. But I want to follow up with one last question for you, Matt. Fantastic conversation. And truthfully, if you listen to all my other podcasts, I haven't said what I'm about to say. It's been one of my favorite. I mean, really. I think people who have a very intimate experience with death have a different viewpoint on life. From the counseling side at the addiction facility, that is a common theme, right? There is death around that building. And some of the happiest people I've ever met have a very intimate relationship with death, whether their own or somebody else's. And when you see somebody that's just like vibrating with positive energy, you're like, where the hell does that come from? And then you start asking them, and it's like, well, my life was almost gone at one point, and now I cherish it, or I've seen it happen to others. I don't know that it's necessary. I hope it's not necessary for someone to really, soak up the last drop out of life, really enjoy it. But it does seem common when people have a much deeper relationship with death. So absolutely been one of my favorite conversations. I appreciate you being so open and just let me prick your brain like this. But my favorite question for you, I don't put it in the questionnaire because some people try to script their answers. I talked about mentors a couple times before. And I was very lucky to meet one in particular. I've had so many. I mean, I even look at mentors as the authors in the book behind me. If you've guided me in some way, you don't need to know me. You don't even need to be alive. Some of those people have been gone for 2,000 years. But she is alive. And I bumped up with her when I was in my early 20s, 22, 23. I was floating through life, not going in any direction that I could see being fruitful long-term. Just the girls, the parties, the cool things. And yeah, it was fun. And I needed to go through that to get to the next stage. But she helped me get to the next stage. And she encouraged me to think about my impact. She was the first one to say, you're born and you die. The middle is the impact of your life. The middle is you. That's it. What do you want that to equate to? So she encouraged me to think about my impact as a human being up to that point, 22, 23. Are you proud of all of it? Do you regret some of it? Were you intentional about any of it? It was like lots I wasn't proud of, lots I do regret. Very little of it was I intentional. Well, we can change that. So now be intentional about your impact of the day, because you may not get tomorrow. Like you said, even shorter than that, you may not get the afternoon. You don't know what's going to happen. So cherish those seconds, those minutes, like it could be your last. And some people define that differently and say they're going to go to Vegas, jump out of a plane, rob a bank. It's like, okay, if that's how you want to spend your last minutes, then that's up to you. But appreciation, I think, is the main thing she's going for. Appreciate the seconds, the minutes, the hours. So be intentional about your impact as you've had so far, your impact for the day. And then for however long you do last, what would you like that impact to look like? Essentially the sum of Jeff, the sum of Matt. And some people take this as legacy. I don't think about legacy so much because I'm not going to be here to see it, to think about it, to touch it. It's going to be left for other people. But I want to enjoy what I'm doing while I'm here, to see the smile on somebody's face or to learn that I'm making a mistake. So we like to ask the guests on the show, Matt, what would you like your impact to be?
You know, when we when we were trying to think of a name for the funeral home, we went through a few, and really we stuck with legacy. And you kind of brought that word up. And really what that is to be is not money, not material things, but what you leave for others. And really, every life has a legacy. And certainly we want to focus on the better things. Unfortunately, there are some legacies that are left that are negative. But really, what I want to leave is if somebody can learn something from me, don't look at the bad stuff because we all have it, but care about others, love others, and do as much good as you can. This kind of goes away from your question a little bit, but I want to just thank you for doing what you're doing with helping with addictions. I was an alcoholic, so I do not drink anymore. My brother died when he was 29 of a drug overdose. It is something that is really close to us. And through this business, we've been able to support a great group called Teen Challenge. And really, we see a lot, especially the last few years of deaths with drug overdoses, with things being put into drugs. And I'm not going to get into a debate whether it's somebody's choice, not their choice, whatever. It's just, it's an epidemic that's happening. And really, if we can do something to change somebody's life, to care for them, to point them in the right direction, then that's what I want for my life.
Damn. Oh man. What a way to end it. Me personally, painkillers, busted my leg. Those things are potent, man. So I had to get through I had to slay my own dragon. And through that, you learn some skills. And then, wanted to give back, use those skills to help somebody else. So I appreciate you sharing that. But what I took from that was, if somebody could watch you, emulate you in love, kindness, and doing as much good as possible, your box is checked. Your cup is full, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
What more could you want, man? It's awesome. What a fantastic conversation, Matt. Honestly, it's just been a pleasure speaking to you. And I very much look forward to more conversations. Hopefully ones that don't have me borderline crying. Maybe we can have a few more laughs next time, but I am not one to shy away from tears. I think, your system is meant for that. And sometimes it can be a great experience, especially when it's a conversation like this, someone that you haven't met before, connect in such a way. That was fantastic, man. It was a pleasure having you on the show. Really.
It's great talking to you, Jeff. Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely, man. Until next time, you enjoy the day, pal.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Midhurst. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpmidhurst.com. That's gnpmidhurst.com or call 705-413-3775.